Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this webinar entitled Empower Data-Driven Decision-Making and Cultivate Dynamic Customer View. We're all very grateful to have you here. We appreciate your time. My name is Graham Proud, founder of the Lighthouse Collective. I'm going to be moderating the session today. So what are we talking about? What are we addressing here essentially? We know that most organizations in our field have a lot of data, and actually they have enough data to make better decisions and informed decisions for their business. The problem is that the data is often poor quality, spread across different systems, internal, external, doesn't include information about how the entities are related. So what we want to talk about today is an approach to cultivating a single customer view, and going beyond that, offering a dynamic insight and fundamentally how we are changing our decision-making processes. So we've got technical considerations here from the IT and data side. We've got some cultural considerations as well as part of this conversation. And of course, the really important question about execution. So every company is unique. There's a different scenario in every company's outfit. So how do we convert all of that into a solution which works and really monetizes that data? So before I introduce the panelists very briefly, just a couple of points. If you've got any questions, submit them now. There's a question facility on the platform. Get your questions in. We can address them at the second half of the session. Also, everyone's opinions, all of the speakers and panelists participating today, their opinions are their own, not necessarily the opinion of their company or organization they're represented. And also, we're recording the session, so you'll have the chance to review this, look at the recording later, share with your colleagues, etc. So brief introductions before we kick off. Shah Ravi, Transformation and Strategy Lead, Retail Digitech, NatWest Group. Shah's an IT professional with a keen interest in digital transformation, initiatives including platforms, processes, ecosystems, solid track record in developing and successfully managing key process change initiatives. Also, mentor, promoter of diversity, women in technology, and encouraging students to get into our industry, which I think is really commendable. So thank you for that, Shah. Akhil is a vice president at Bank of Singapore, 21 years, not the only person with 20 plus years in this webinar of experience, mostly focused on various areas of digital transformation, also end-to-end project delivery management, and interestingly, translating legacy scenarios into more modern workable entities. So good to have you here, Akhil. Chris Simvalingam, decision science and real-time analytics expert, working in the Australian industry, primary roles, exploring how to use data, insights, AI to make real-time algorithmic decision-making, and that can support customer engagement, proposition, compliance, risk, fraud. So again, great to have you here, Chris. And Dan Onions as well, Global Head of Data Management at Quantexa, a strategic advisor in enabling change within organization, from an IT point of view, from a technology point of view. Again, sorry to embarrass you, Dan, 20 plus years experience, showing your age there a little bit. But looking at transformation, consulting and delivery crucially. And that's enterprise architecture. It can include solution architecture, IT delivery, system integration, product, and so on. So we've got a really good mix of experience here from a technical point of view and also from a project delivery point of view, which is crucial. Welcome everybody, and glad to have you here, and thank you from the Lighthouse Collective and Quantexa for being involved. So we're going to just kick off with some brief opening statements around a topic, your initial thoughts, your feelings around why this is pertinent and important to the industry. Akhil, if I can come to you first to talk about your perspective before we go into a more sort of cross-conversational dialogue. Akhil, are you there?
Sorry, I got disconnected from my internet. Can
No
you hear me now?
problem. I can. Why don't we
Okay,
we'll just move on while you get yourself sorted out.
sure,
And
sure.
Shah, why don't you kick things off and we'll go back to Akhil.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'm really, really happy to be here and really excited to hear about what the other wonderful panelists have to say. Thank you, Graham, for this opportunity. Moving on, talking about data-driven decision making, I'm here to present a perspective from a transformation standpoint, from a cultural standpoint. Having said that, this whole idea of using data to drive your customer experience is very, very personal to me in terms of how I'm sure a lot of you would have had this such experiences. When I contact my bank, I give my details out. I spell out my name. I really have a big name. So I go Papa, Romeo, Indigo, Tango, Hotel, blah, 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 and have a really big surname as well. And I get exhausted by the time I spell out my name. Then I tell them I have a problem with my credit card. They transfer me to someone else. And again, I go Papa, Romeo, Indigo. I'm like, you work for the same bank. Can't you not like share the data? So this is I didn't realize that until I started working with clients, banking clients, and for a bank and whatnot, to how siloed or how much functional silos we have within department where they sit on a lot of data and they don't share data because it's not because they don't want to, it's because the system don't let them to. So there's sort of all these intricacies when you think it's as something as simple as how can they not know my name can be. That's because there is so much wall between the system, wall between the departments. They don't talk to each other, they don't understand the language they speak in and whatnot. So this is very crucial that financial services, banking in particular, get uh, the data management right. And the aspects around that, I say one should prioritize, a bank should prioritize, is not only consider data or data management or its strategy, also think about the technical side of things. So you build up this whole nice castle around data and don't have the technology to support that, and it's a sand castle, it's going to fall off. So always have your tech strategy in mind so that it marries up with your data strategy. The other bit is around data value chain flow, where you have different departments, and ensure that there are not many access restrictions, or if the right people should have the right data at the right time. While there are restrictions based on security, who can see what, ensure that the data value chain flows seamlessly across departments. The final bit is opening up data, whichever we can open up to other partners. This can be ensured having modern API enabled architecture. So these are 3 points I would probably, according to me, my personal opinion, to recommend any financial institution or any business organization, as a matter, to look at before they jump into data analytics bandwagon. That's my 2 cents for you.
Sure. Brilliant. No, great context, and I think good points and very relevant. Akhil, you're back on. I can see you. Why don't you give us your initial take?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Great.
Okay, great. So one of the thing is that why this data-centric decision making is personal to me, because for a simple reason, every day the content which I read, the videos which I watch, or any updates which I post on social media, or any product which I buy, someone somewhere is actually collecting this info and utilizing the same to understand my buying pattern, my likings, my behavior, and whatnot. So all our digital behavior is being captured. Now, this applies to all of us, not just to me. I read in one of the research that it was estimated that for every human being, 1.7 megabyte of information is generated every second with this information collection. Now, assume that we have more than 7.7 billion people on this planet. We are estimating of around 25,000 hours of long video per second. Now, this is the amount of data which is being collected from various sources. It can be interesting, it sounds scary, right? Okay. Now, why this topic is very important? It is important because we know that the data is a new oil in today's world. The ability for the organization to mine this data as part of the digital transformation is key to winning the customers, increasing the market share, and business survival. In business, there is always an element of risk, but data driven decisions make you less vulnerable to risky decisions going wrong. Companies that use data at the core of their decision making reduces cost and increase profitability. Now, uh, why do we say, okay, what are the things which I feel that it is important when you are making a data centric decision making? First of all, you need to decide what is your business goal and what is it that you want to improve. You should begin asking what goals I need to improve, and what is the and then you start making the decisions on it. The second point is you need to identify what is the present and the relevant data for you. Why? For me, it's important to have the relevant data because everyone is doing that analysis of this data. You don't want to spend hours of the data in analyzing, and the outcome is not relevant or is not impacting your goals. It doesn't make sense. So you need to keep the relevant data and only collect the data that relates to your objective. Now this data you can collect, as I said, via whatever the companies are collecting the data. So they're collecting the data based on the feedback from the internal customer, external customer, website analytics, CRM software, Excel, or there are n number of data sources which the data is being collected from. So once you have collected the data, take a look at the historical data and identify the patterns and the trends. Once you have done that, you need to create your plan of action and put that decision into practice. Finally, measure the success and repeat this process, because data-centric decision making is a continuous journey and is not a destination. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Akhil. And it sounds obvious, but it's so true that having a clear strategy at the start in terms of what you're trying to achieve and collecting the sort of relevant data related to that objective is so important. And I think from an insurance point of view, not just banking, I know that a lot of insurers fall down in that respect. So good to hear that. Chris, welcome. Please give us your take.
Thank you, Graham, for the opportunity. Shah, Daniel, and Akhil, it's a pleasure sharing this panel with you guys. So I'm going to talk about taking this data-driven decisioning in a real-time world, in a real-time analytical world, a real-time decisioning world, how you organize data, through real-time feeds, as well as insights coming from data warehousing or data lakes. And feed that features into decision engines where you can actually make decisions in various domains, like Graham mentioned, on customer engagement, fraud, pricing, risk, compliance, and so on and so forth. And to be able to make these decisions, and the decisions themselves are pieces of data, then you want to be able to feed that data back into other decision engines or other decision-making processes to be able to create an ecosystem where you can truly automate an end-to-end customer value proposition or customer journey for a financial services or banking or insurance or whatever the industry that you wanted to enable this. So excited to talk to you guys about this.
Thanks, Chris, and great to have that sort of experience in the room in terms of the real-time side of things. I think that's really important and really valuable nowadays. Dan, you've heard a lot here in terms of insight. I think we've covered quite a lot of bases broadly. What's your take on this piece?
Yeah, hi everyone. Pleasure to be here today. Yeah, my take on it is, I mean, large organizations have always struggled to get full value from data. And it really is that same old problem of, data lives in separate siloed applications and it doesn't naturally join up. But in many ways, data silos are the new normal. That is that we need to gather data from so many different sources both inside and outside the organization, in order to kind of understand customers in the way that we need to. And guess what? These sources were never designed to join up. In this world of kind of huge numbers of sources, single customer views are more relevant than ever before. And expectations are also higher on getting value from that data. So it's not just about, say, creating accurate reports about your customer, but giving staff members rich insights at the point they need it, such as when dealing with a demanding customer, or being able to make automated decisions in real time whilst a customer's waiting on the other end of a laptop or phone or a device. And these decisions all need data that's joined up to provide the right context. And single customer views need to be able to provide these contextual views of customers to better understand their needs. That's not just the customer record, but like the household that the individual belongs to, or for a business record, the corporate hierarchy, you know, understanding how they kind of sit in the world, their recent experience with the organization, the businesses that they are connected to. The other key point is that context changes depending on who's using the data, on the type of decision you're trying to make. So the needs of an automated engine for creating credit offers might be different from what's needed for, say, fraud detection or a customer service staff. And context means filtering out the noise of the data to leave what's relevant for that decision.
Great to get a little bit of embellishment on the customer point of view. We can't forget that at the end of the day. Of course, they don't really care how we do it or how we get there, but it's so important because at the end of the day, that's why we're moving along this innovation journey. So to kick things off and to start from quite a rational beginning, I'd like to bring in Chris and Akhil to comment on the data landscape as it stands with the banking industry and the banking sector. What does that landscape look like at the moment from a banking point of view? And secondly, what is the impact of not having that complete view of the customer for an organization like a bank? What would that mean?
Yep.
So I'll start with you, Akhil.
Sure. So while the idea of the data landscape is very powerful, but I feel the reality is that we are still evolving on this front. There are numerous data sources and channels from which the bank receives the data. These data comes in numerous formats, and the same needs to be stored in a central repository where the data will be transformed and then analyzed. So from a landscape perspective, the banks are investing heavily on big data technologies and have been working on creating their own enterprise data warehouses and data lakes, which will help them to proactively identify and mitigate business and regulatory risks. Now, coming to the second part of the question, which I feel is very important, that what is the impact of not having the complete customer view? The impact is very significant. If the customer data is kept in silos, which I believe one of the presenters said, then it is very difficult to keep the data always up to date in all locations and at all time. Now, without the complete data view, each department might have their own understanding of the customer behavior and preferences, because they are thinking on their own. They are not this is not a combined analysis from the company. And now, and also the companies might not be able to predict the future demand, as the customers' past behavior, past purchases, history, and interaction preferences are all segregated. Now, everyone is trying to find ways to improve the complete customer view. New data-led service and business models continue to emerge, and organizations are using this data to enhance service delivery and provide sophisticated personalized content, recommendations, or products. Recently, one of the local bank has rolled out a few intelligent banking features where they suggest an equity stocks based on the customer's investment pattern, and prompts that speed up the day-to-day banking functions, so customers can perform their transactions with a single tap or a swipe on their mobile phone, such as paying their mobile bills all in one go, and automatically notifying the customers in the event of an unusual or higher than normal bill payments. So these are the things which the companies are analyzing with the complete customer view. Now, finally, with data-centric decision making, companies can can deliver helpful and actionable insights that guide customers to make more informed financial and investment decisions.
Thanks, Akhil. And also, I'd back up that statement around siloed situations, because this is an impossible situation, really. When the siloed situations exist and there's differences between those, it becomes very complex and difficult to really maximize the potential for that data. So, Chris, off the back of that, what's your point of view on the modern data landscape that banks are facing, and crucially, the impact of not having a single view?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the, just to build on what Akhil said, so the banks are kind of looking at data and organization of data from an enterprise view perspective. It's critical, right? So you got numerous, 200, 300 different source systems, and customer might exist in, in its banking core banking platform, as well as the same customer might exist in a credit card system, a home loan system, and other systems that, call center or whatever, from a customer complaints perspective. So to be able to bring this customer view, a single customer view, and deduping these customers and bring them into a single ecosystem it's critical. That's where the banks are kind of heavily investing in the enterprise customer view. And once you build this enterprise customer view, data consumption perspective, how do you want to organize data for compliance purposes? How do you want to organize data for, financial reporting purposes? And how do you want to organize data for customer engagement or model execution? You kind of need to organize data in different viewpoint or different layers or different structure in order to consume this, make this data conducive for various consumption. So this is where the struggle right now is to be able to, getting the data in one place, which is kind of, it's a problem that I think most of the banks are solving. Now, the second problem is that how do I kind of augment this data or restructure this data for various consumption by different, downstream consumers, and not to mention the real-time decisioning. It's another analytical platform where how do you want to organize data for this? It's another struggle as well. So.
Brilliant, thanks, Chris. Really important points there. Shah, slightly different point of view here, but equally as important, and more important in the modern day in terms of data literacy, moving between departments and actually becoming a common language between traditional departments which didn't really have a concern with data and that side of the business. So from a cultural point of view and a transformation point of view, what is your take on having a united data strategy, and where are we? Are we data intelligent as banking companies?
Well, that's a lovely question, actually, something I'm really passionate about. So I work in a lot of transformation projects and trying to run transformation initiatives, be it digital transformation, agile transformation, whatnot. So I'm quite, people, when dealing with any sort of transformation, leave the data out of it for now. There's a lot of resistance usually from people, from processes that are there. So even when we look at transforming data, bringing in better data management, working towards a good data strategy, the cultural aspect people tend to forget usually. So most important thing to get right, before moving on to how different departments work together, is to get good buy-in at the leadership level. So first, the leadership team and people who are running, who are sponsoring this bit, should understand what we are trying to achieve here in terms of data strategy. What is our end goal here? So getting their buy-in, making them understand what sort of where we are where we are getting to. While they might know the endpoint, sorry, but what are the different nuances is something we need to be clear upfront. So leadership buy-in is the first point. The next thing is around there's lots of cultural stigma in bringing or resistance from people on the ground. Say for example, you're looking at how operations team work or trying to automate stuff. Usually people feel threatened when they think they're going to be replaced by a machine. When they think, I said, all right. So it's important, we need to build in this trust for whatever change we are going to bring in. So making people understand that they're not taking away your jobs, this is what we are trying to achieve. Getting the buy-in at the grassroots level is the next bit around. I mean, that is heavily influenced by how the culture of the organization is. So however you are implementing your data transformation or digital transformation projects, it's important that we get the trust from the employees at the onset. This can be probably done by say you look at small aspects and you look at objective experimentation in terms of how you bring in these data driven decision making, compare it with gut feeling, and you're able to win employees over to your side, so that they are the one who's going to use the data sometimes. So it's important that you win them over and bring them into your team so that they are able to consume the data and work on the insights from that. That's the other bit. The final bit is around when we talk about culture, there are two aspects to it here. There are in a data management transformation initiative that you run, there are two bunch of people usually, and they are segregated into different buckets. So say you have your development team, the technology team, who talks sprints and sprint goals and features and user stories and whatnot. You have your data scientists who talk modeling and fine tuning and data sets, and so they speak two different languages. It's important that we have to marry them up so that they understand, they work for the same cause and they work in the same team and they understand each other. So this part of the culture, while people try to talk the trust part and the leadership element are done naturally, because those are common elements of any transformation. The stuff peculiar or specific to data management is these two buckets of people who are the technologists or the technical team who do the development, say, and the other bits are the data scientists. So it's important that they speak to each other, speak in the same language, and they understand that they work together as a team. So if we have all that in place, we can have the departments work together. So the other bit around is the access and the tools that you require to be able to draw these insights from your data. Culturally, a lot of say financial services or even banking sector are heavily, say, hierarchical driven, where you have only certain people have access to certain kind of data. But what we are looking at here is giving the right sort of information to the right person at the right time. So you can't keep going around for, hey, you know what, I want access to that tool and access to that particular data set so that I can understand what my customer is doing. That should not be the case. So the access and the tool element should be embedded in the way we do transformation, embedded within the culture, so that it's not a big stigma to ask for data access, or it should be available, not that it should not be protected in brick walls and whatnot. So this is my opinion on the cultural bit.
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
I mean, that on that data access point, I know from an insurance point of view, what's happening more and more is that the data access is being matched with individuals and departments very clearly, so that there's no time wasted there, because there's nothing worse than an innovation team or an analytics department or a customer department having to go through sort of an internal bureaucratic process to gain data for them to, in order for them to move something on. It's a waste of time, and it's really frustrating. The other thing which is really frustrating is the leadership buy-in, which you mentioned. I wish people would never talk about this and it wasn't an issue, because is there anything else, or is there any other option but to use data as a driving force for decision making, and to one, invest in that by putting your money where your mouth is from the top down, and two, trusting the expertise and the talent within your teams to execute on behalf of that investment. Because if you're not doing that, you're completely irrelevant as an organization. And any leadership team that supports a structure which is outside of that data trusting community, I find it, very old-fashioned. Dan, I don't know
Indeed.
if you've got an opinion on that. And just extending on this conversation, it's been very interesting so far, by the way, guys. And looking at that single view of the customer, why isn't this happening more widespread? Is that leadership part of it? I hope not. And what can we do to begin addressing some of the detailed issues around actually achieving that?
Great question. And I think, firstly, it's worth saying that it is a very hard problem to solve technically. So I mean, you're taking many different data sources. So IT applications, external, each have different attributes about a customer. Each have different levels of validation that were applied. They're all each intended for different purposes, and you have to pull all those together into something coherent. And although the data is, often placed together, say in a data lake, it doesn't mean to say that it actually joins up. And secondly, data matching is often based on technology that's not really changed in 20 years or so. Based on algorithms that were invented in the 1960s. Basically on single record-to-record matching. It's not really coping with the variety of data that today's organizations have to face. Many organizations have tried, using commercial products around this, such as master data management vendors, and have not necessarily, got the success that they want. And when those programs have been written off as failures, obviously often are, unfortunately, not always fairly, but quite often they are. They try self-building, say using open source, but actually they're repeating the same mistake because they're using the same old matching technology. So that those kind of large data environments, the data lakes, they are a great starting point, because you start to pull all the data into one place. You need to be able to do that to kind of start the journey to allow data scientists and IT. And I thought it was a great point that Shah made around the language that IT and data scientists kind of speak, it being different. Data scientists often want to noodle around in data, find great insights, but then IT then need to quite often rewrite that to deliver it, or and that's often the relationship in organizations. And it's not an efficient way of delivering value and getting value from data. And for a data scientist or a data engineer to they're often spending 50% of their time just wrangling data together in order to kind of get that value out of it. So there's a lot of room for improvement, and I think there's some of the reasons that the organizations struggle.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, it's not easy, is it? It's a complex picture, as you mentioned, and from the technical point of view, Chris and Akhil, I'll turn to you again. In this process of achieving a single customer view, what are some of the technical bumps in the road that you guys have come across, or can you talk a little bit on that journey? Akhil, I'll come to you first.
Sure. So from my point of view, single customer view can be achieved by merging various pieces of information from multiple sources. But in many cases, as we discussed earlier, these sources are all scattered throughout the whole organization in tools which is used by different departments. Now, the data which you may collect may consist of your web, mobile, or behavioral data. Like, for example, what products or services is the customer spending more time, and which is least spend time. Then the other can be your personal data. Then you have the transactional data, like for example, how many or the number of products which you're purchasing both online and offline. To put technically, you can actually match the name, address, and date of birth and apply unique customer identifier to all the records for that particular customer, and that's how you can achieve it. But it doesn't look as simple as we say about it. So there are challenges or bump roads which are there in achieving the single customer view. The first and foremost challenge in my view is the main challenge is to properly collect all the data, and more importantly to connect the data points from different sources. Second, we discussed earlier about the data silos. The customer data is stored in separate location, spread across the organization, be it sales, marketing, finance, IT, or any other department. They're paying more attention to their individual KPIs and metrics and analyzing the data rather than concentrating on the customer themselves. This makes it almost impossible to share information between the teams, and that's why I mentioned earlier that each department makes their own perception about the customer. Third is there is a lot of duplicate data in the systems. What Chris mentioned earlier, the data is residing in multiple systems. It's the same data which is residing in your core banking, your loans one, your customer contact center, XYZ. So there is the same data which is residing everywhere. So this makes it more challenging to create a single customer view. Now, how we have done it is creating the single customer view, I believe, is a still work in progress. And for the most of the organization, in last 1 decade or so, the companies have realized that the data silos problem and have been addressing it by creating a master database which can aggregate the data from different sources, transform it to useful formats, and make it accessible to other customers, other systems.
Thanks, Akhil. That's really insightful. And Chris, interested to hear your take on this. You know, as a real-time expert, the ultimate goal here is to understand what the customer's doing, respond to it quickly, and to provide that service, to monetize it. What's your experience in terms of the technical challenge here, in terms of achieving that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, I'm kind of touching back onto what Daniel said, right? So, 2 points that he mentioned, that, you know, the technology that we are using to match customers, it's from the 1960s. Absolutely, I second that. So, I mean, there is a lot of, you know, AI tools, the AI mechanisms or methodology that we can employ now to be able to bring customers together, customer records together, and match them and bring a cohesive layer of data. So I mean, I look at data as like sediments, right? Rock sediments. It's data archaeology, right? So in a data lake, you have sediments of data, kind of a daily snapshots of what happened, what that customer looked like at the end of the day. And that's what most of the financial services organizations are kind of achieving at this point, to be able to get that data sediment on a daily basis. However, data doesn't change, only once a day, right? Information changes all the time. So through real-time speed layer, or some Kafka queues, or some real-time feeds from various source systems, you are getting data in real time. And the challenge is, how do you marry that, that intraday data changes to the daily snapshots that have been built up, and to create that customer view that is both historical and current, and to be able to make decisions in real time, right? So that's the next challenge that organizations, not only banks but even other organizations, are trying to achieve, and trying to figure out, yes, this customer looked like this way yesterday, day before yesterday, 4 weeks ago, 7 months ago, but the customer looks like this today. And what does that change means, compared to the historical viewpoint of that customer? And how do I bring that information together so that I can make real-time decisions? So again, and bringing all these disparate data from various source systems how do you bring them together in real time? That's the challenge that I think banks are facing, and that's the nut to crack going forward.
Yeah, it's a massive challenge, isn't it? When you're talking about current behavior, historical behavior, we're complex organisms, and matching all of that up to something which is truly insightful is difficult. It's difficult. Shah, let's just go to you for a second, just to take one step backwards and talk about, if we pull this off, what are the benefits for the customer? Why are we doing this from your point
Sure.
of view?
All right. If you think from a customer point of view, well, if you see, say a customer has a relationship with a bank or insurer or a financial services setup, it's just a relationship that they have. They would want more from the relationship because there's so much competition in the market. There are incumbent, there are challenger banks, there are fintechs trying to pretend to be banks and whatnot. So it's, for a customer, they always think about, I'm also a customer, think about how can I, what maximum can I get out of this relationship. So this whole single customer view and getting better customer experience based on how the data I provide, how I behave, and how, what are the different touch points I use. It's just wonderful because I don't have to invest anything extra. I have this relationship already. I am getting maximum out of it. So in terms of banks, they can they are sitting on a lot of data here, like I mentioned, but there's so much competition. You can't. The differentiator is not that you offer XYZ product or you better loan rates or whatnot. The differentiator here is the customer experience and how far you can push it, how far you can go to sort of impress your customer. So banks should probably sort of do away with the different number of products or different credit card products, have a standard set of product and pitch, choose their customer or look at the customer's pattern and pitch what is important to the customer, what they'll be interested in. That's what we are trying to achieve. Going one step forward, we have all these data and we have this customer relationship. Why not work with our partners, be it fintechs or any other partner, to embed that data into their channel in a way that will be useful for the customer. Say you sending out something through WhatsApp because you have your, this is something that happens a lot in India. I went to have my hair cut. I got my invoice on my WhatsApp because I gave them their number, my number. So it's using that wisely, finding your right partners to take your data further forward and to give better personalized and customized services to the customer at their doorstep rather than them asking for it. So that's where the differentiator will come from. That will make the customer happy, and you work with your partners not to against them, because in this space, data space, everyone is competing. You have your bank, challenger bank, like I mentioned, you have your fintechs, you have your companies like tech giants like Amazon and whoever. You're competing with everyone. Why not work with them to embed that data so that you can deliver a product or service to your customer using the relationship that you have? So that is a win-win for you and the customer. So that's where my thoughts are at.
Great, Shah. And I think we haven't mentioned the word personalization yet, and we haven't also differentiated this move towards dynamic customer view versus single customer view, because ultimately the financial players that will win this situation are the ones that understand their customers most and respond to it effectively, and that's based on data and insight. But there is a gap because we're not all doing that. Some of us are doing it better than others, and there's a diverse population out there with multiple needs. So what is the technology gap, Dan, from your point of view? There's a huge opportunity here. We're far off it. There's a huge potential. Where are we going wrong, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, great question. And I mean, what's really needed is not really to kind of not just join up all the data. You need to make sense of it, and different consumers of data, quite often need different views. So, different parts of the organization, whether you're kind of offering customers a personalized view, or whether of a given product, or if you're trying to offer them a new product, they are different contextual views of data, essentially. in the past, data has been quite two-dimensional. You know, we think of customer records as a record, but now it's very much multi-dimensional. You know, there's multiple aspects of it. It's not just a single record. It's a connected network view of data that's needed as a part of this. And there's a shift in approach really from the way that traditional data matching works that I mentioned earlier. And I guess there's two things that organizations can learn from in this. First, there's a step change in the algorithms that can cope with this kind of scale and variety of data that needs to be joined. And secondly, that use of those algorithms needs to be much more focused on the needs of different data consumers within the organization that are then offering that customer value. Because, you know, you need a place, at least one single place where you're kind of joining together all those data silos. Our context, so we use algorithms based on entity resolution. So we build entities such as people, businesses, addresses by bringing together multiple records. So for instance, Dan Onions is a real world entity that reflects me. That's me and not any other Dan Onions, but it's based on multiple records about me. So it's the customer records like my savings account, my mortgage, or in insurance, my insurance products, which may have been separate records, but actually you need to see that as a single person, a single real world person, and any directorships I might have from external data, my contact history, my complaints cases. Not that I'm like that, but you know, I don't make that many complaints to organizations, just so you know. But effectively, you need to take away the duplication in data and seeing it as kind of separate records to kind of creating an enriched view, you know, a single, you know, a true single view about the customer. And once you've got that, you can start to do lots of different things. So, you know, you can start to say, you know, let's score the data quality. Let's see based on that kind of complete view of customer, you know, where are the anomalies between different records. You can start to kind of remediate lots of issues automatically, but you know, primarily you want to get customer service right first time. You want to have decisions that are made accurately first time in real time. Going to Chris's point, you know, at the point that the customer needs that decision to be made. And more than that, you know, to have people use this new technology, you need to take into account the kind of modern needs in organizations. And you know, Shah and others mentioned, you know, API-driven, you know, services within organizations. So this isn't just about data lake type technology. The technology needs to kind of serve up data, kind of both from an analytical perspective in a data lake, but it also, all that decisioning needs to work in an operational context as well. And of course, as Chris was saying, in real time too. So the expectation is very high. But the technology needs to kind of meet that. What we often call that is a data utility or data as a service. You know, you need a place conceptually in the organization which can serve up data for those multiple uses and serve up consistent views, but actually personal views to those different consumers, so that you can kind of meet those digital needs, meet those kind of you know, needs of customers on the phone. And you know, understand the risk as well. You know, the risk that the organisation is posing from the aggregate view of data, the aggregate view of you know, the operations with your customers. So I think in some ways it's a shift in thinking. You know, in terms of the way you position the technology to kind of be more consumer focused. I think that's quite a big thing, as well as the kind of the algorithms and you know, the way that technology works.
Great, thanks, Dan. I think it's interesting, isn't it, how recent this timeline of change has happened from being a company that would respond to quite a two-dimensional view of the customer in terms of responding to certain forms and basic information and delivering on that, versus being able to create a deeper insight. You almost feel like that should have happened a little while ago, or we should be a bit further on in terms of converting that intelligence into monetization and improvements within the business. And hopefully we can move that forwards quickly. We're slightly running out of time. We're down to the last 10 minutes. So there's a few more points to make. Akhil and Chris, quickly, in terms of measuring success, in terms of achieving a single customer view, how do we do this? Are we sort of getting feedback from the customer and experience teams on that, or how do we know we're doing the right thing? Akil, you first.
Yep, you're right. So for me, the success is when a single customer view can highlight the customers that are most loyal to you or valuable to you, so that you can concentrate your marketing effort on these group of people in more efficient way, so as you can optimize your marketing budgets. You will also develop a greater understanding to cross and upsell opportunities with these type of customers. The second thing is, if we are able to make fewer costlier mistakes by not having multiple silos and reduce likelihood of making errors. Lastly, I would say the happier and the loyal customers who sees your brand which is better suited to their needs. These are the customers who are more likely to encourage further communications with you, sign up to your, say, loyalty programs or schemes, or view your organization positively. Customers with high regard for your brand are more likely to buy and return to purchase again. So for me, if we are able to see this, we are successful in having a single customer view.
Great, makes sense, Akil. Chris, what does it look like for you in terms of success in this sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, to me, the way I look at it is it's how do you make your customer conversations relevant, right? So, if I'll just give you a couple of use cases. You know, what's the best time to sell you a credit card to a customer when you see this customer paying some of the bank's credit card or competitive bank's credit card payment? You know, monthly payment. That's the time you want to be able to go and sell a credit card to the customer. What's the best time to go and collect a compliance related information on this customer refresh, KYC refresh. Just take that example and say, hey, occupation, having the recent occupation of the customer in your system, it's critical from a customer life cycle perspective as well as customer risk assessment perspective. So to be able to have that conversation with the customer when the customer looks at the day-to-day banking statement, to be able to detect through the payroll system, understanding this customer used to work for IBM, now this customer works for a construction company. That change in customer information will trigger the customer providing the latest customer information related to the occupation, right? So to be able to engage that customer in a more relevant, more passive fashion, to be able to get that customer information collected, then going to that customer and say, hey, I'm doing a customer KYC refresh. Can you please give me these 5 pieces of information? That's very mechanical, right? So do you want to have a constant conversation with that customer? Because that's how human beings operate, right? I mean, when I meet Graham on the road, I talk about the recent conversations or recent we're just coming out of a lockdown. How's the weather in Sydney? So that's how we interact with individuals, as human beings. So you want to have that typical conversation with the customer in a more dialogue fashion than just kind of a more mechanical. Would mean that you'll have better customer viewpoint and single truth of customer collected.
So it's really about an informed engagement, isn't it? And continuing that dialogue so that they value what you're doing just as much as the other way around. Okay, so Dan, just looking at this from a future perspective in terms of tech empowered digital first approach, what role can external data play in understanding customers? And what is the potential here to open up new revenues as we see clearer and more revealing insights on the customers in this respect?
Yeah, so external data, I mean, there is a lot of it about, is the first thing to say. And, external data can be, purchased from lots of different providers. And that's because a lot of data is being collected. And I think these days it is becoming essential, for that customer experience, because customers do expect you to kind of know much more about them. And that combined with some of the challenges around privacy is a hard thing to kind of square up. But that external data can be really important to kind of enrich what you know about your customer. You shouldn't need to contact a customer for KYC purposes if that data is already available. For business customers, that's you don't have that kind of privacy issue, but that external data is something you need to kind of pull together, get joined up views, get that enriched view already, and then you're going to a customer with the with knowledge already of what they might be interested in. And that's where the revenue streams come in, because you can use that external data, things like company structures and connected directors. So a director that's on one company is also a director on another. That is a social connection. That's a referral point that you can use to find new prospects. Same with corporate hierarchies. A subsidiary of another company, quite often you bank one but not the other, or you're offering insurance services to one and not the other, because that kind of knowledge of the ownership structure and those kind of key roles within the organization is not fully known by the organization. So that external data is so important to kind of take advantage of those kind of revenue streams, and also protect your business from the competition. And there are, there's insurance, there's competition in both, banking and insurance, and I think it's coming fast, with new technology and these new startups.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, it's a big question. The external data, factor that in with internal versus external development and bringing it all together into an actionable strategy. It's something to consider for every organization. I'm going to move forward to just giving everybody the opportunity to allow our audience for some key takeaways. So it's just 30 seconds, 1 minute each to get your point across here. Shah, what are your key takeaways from this?
Sure. My key takeaway is so we've spoken about data-driven decision making. One thing we have always keep in mind is data is just a tool to get where we want to get, which is enrich customer experience or personalized services to customer, helping our customers. So data is just a tool. So we, instead of looking at say, okay, I have this data, what can I do with it? We should always think about, I have this customer, how can I help my customer? What data do I need to help my customer? That's the way one needs to think, rather than data centric. So data is just a tool to achieve your end goal. So that's my key takeaway from my 2 cents, or key takeaway from this.
Thanks, Shah. Important. Chris, what about you? Oh, you're on mute.
Just piggybacking on Shah's comment here. So, I mean, this is the, just if I just take a look at the tail wagging the dog, syndrome. I have seen, many scenarios where, where you got a bunch of data people say, I got a bunch of data here. What can I do with it? It should start from the business problem. You should understand, what am I trying to solve? And understand that business problem and figure out a way to solve that and use data as a tool, then then getting all excited about data and then try to go and figure out a problem, as a result of that you're having a bunch of data, right? So this is a common problem that I'm seeing everywhere, that the tail wagging the dog syndrome with data.
Yeah, absolutely. Akhil?
Yeah, so for me, the key takeaways will be, as we hear the saying, number speaks for themselves. So it is important for the companies, including banks, to get a consolidated, comprehensive, and a 360-degree view of the customer data. Uh, in business, there is always an element of risk. So the companies who are using the data-centric decisions are likely to make less mistakes than others. Companies that use the decision making at the core, reduces the cost and increase the profit. And finally, I would say that data driven decisions went from being a priority in the past absolutely necessary in order to survive the unplanned and significant changes to the business environment. That's what my key takeaway from here.
Thanks, Akhil. Dan, last word with you. Big issue here, lots of potential. What do you see as the key takeaways?
I think one of the key things is that, I mean, the competitive threat is a big one in a sense. I mean, the time is now for kind of banks and insurance companies to start to really tackle this. There could be a really big shift in the financial services landscape, all these challenger banks. For large organizations to compete with that, the key is to be able to join up your data. As Shah mentioned earlier, you need it for that great customer experience. You need that great customer experience to compete in this market now. You need the joined up data to make automated decisions. The expectations are higher than ever, and that's why I think now is the time to kind of, you know, make that journey into that kind of technology.
Thanks, Dan. I think from the conversations today, the case is very clear that data-centric organizations and data intelligence-led decision-making is the way forward, and it should be, you know, absolutely widespread in terms of the approach. Thanks to everybody for their contributions today. Lots of insights, lots of experience, different geographies, different perspectives. I think it's been really relevant and insightful to every bank and actually insurance agency or insurance company in this respect. We hope to see you again very soon. I would say continue the conversation, look us up on LinkedIn, get in touch. Dan and the team at Quantex are very much involved in this, so do reach out if you have any questions in that respect. And the rest of the guys, you know, good luck on your continuing journey within banking and digital transformation and data transformation. It's an interesting time to work in the industry, certainly. Recordings are available soon. Stay in touch. Thanks very much wherever you are in the world, and we'll speak to you again very soon. So goodbye.
Thanks, Graham, for giving the
Bye,
opportunity.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Bye.